Welcome to Next Time Around, brought to you by Powerverse, the podcast where we take on the big questions of the green transition and explore how the world is changing for a cleaner, brighter future. We are your hosts, Richard Britton
and Lauren Forster,
and we'll be diving into the tech, the policies, and the big ideas that are reshaping industries and people's lives. Whether it's cutting-edge innovations or shifting priorities, we are here to figure out what it all means for you and the world we're building for tomorrow. So buckle up as we take a fresh look at how the changes today are laying the groundwork for a better next time around.
Our guest today, Alex Baggallay, works as Growth Partnerships Lead for UK and Ireland at Salesforce. He has a wealth of experience helping businesses transform to meet customer expectations. Focusing on how businesses can use software to disrupt the market, we'll be discussing how data and AI is revolutionising markets and creating opportunities for new business processes. Welcome to the podcast, Alex.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's good to have you here. So just to kick off, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to the point of working at Salesforce?
So I spent the early part of my career, the first 10 years, in management consultancy, doing operating model transformation, process transformation, and increasingly over that time, all of those transformations became tech-powered. And in the last couple of years of my career, I started doing far more front office transformation, far more around the customer, and that led me to work a lot with Salesforce. And at the time, I felt that the dynamic was shifting in the market and a lot of the influence on strategy, on execution was being driven by the technology players rather than the consultancies. So I moved ship to Salesforce 5 years ago. I led a lot of our large accounts for about 2.5, 3 years. And more recently, I've gone into this growth partnership space, working with organizations to help them go to market in new ways powered by Salesforce.
Amazing. That sounds like quite a journey.
Yeah, it's been fun.
And how have you seen that the market has changed over this time?
So I think the first thing I talk about is how technology is viewed. So when I first started, certainly in the early stages of transformation, technology was almost viewed as a necessary evil. Companies knew they had to digitize. Customers saw their customers go online and started embracing new channels and all of that innovation. But over time, that reticence is turned into innovation, strategy, and more existential questions. I think now if we fast forward a decade plus, you're seeing companies talk about data and AI as ways for them to reimagine their business, having to evaluate who they are, what they do, who they serve, how they serve them, where they serve them. And that trend's only going to increase over the next 2 or 3 years at a rapid pace. I'd say the last thing is the pace of change. In the last 2 or 3 years, I've never seen businesses ask more questions of themselves than they've asked in the last 2 or 3 years.
It's a fascinating topic. Really, really interesting to hear you talk about it, Alex. So you've obviously placed yourself right in the middle of lots of change and lots of transformation that's happening.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us a bit about the sorts of processes that you've seen change and the way that's moved.
Perhaps one that's really close to my heart is the automotive space. I spent a number of years working with automotive manufacturers. And you just have to think through the nature of a car and how that's changed to think about new business processes. So if we rewind 10 years ago, a car was an offline vehicle with no connectivity or next to no connectivity, maybe a cable plugging into a phone at best. Now, cars are essentially mobile phones with wheels or hyper-powered devices with wheels. And car manufacturers are now lifestyle experience companies. They're having to understand how they can not only deliver the customer from A to B, but provide ancillary services, connect with new businesses, build ecosystems, build partnerships. So we've done a lot of work with a number of the automotive OEMs, as they call themselves, in the UK to help them through that journey. How do you go from being a manufacturer of a thing to a provider of experiences and services? I'd say that trend is pretty consistent across most manufacturing supply chain based industries, but it's going across all industries right now.
Amazing. And such a big change. I remember when it was the cigarette lighter and you could just about plug your old
Charge
mobile
your phone. Exactly.
into that. And it's now lifestyle ecosystems. That's quite a big shift. And an industry that's really close to my heart, and obviously one that you know about and we've been working together, is the energy sector and how that's changing. What's your perspective on the kind of the big trends and the changes that are happening?
Well, I was reflecting on that on the way over. And what struck me is how consumers typically talk about the energy sector. They talk about it as their energy supplier.
Yes, that's right.
That's quite a transactional term. I get my supply of energy from X organization. And kind of drawing the parallels there to automotive, we're going to go from, and I believe we're rapidly moving to them being the home lifestyle organization, in the same way the car is evolving and how that supports new ways of working, new processes, new experiences on your way to work, wherever you're going. I believe the role the energy sector, and particularly energy suppliers, have to play is to understand how can they support people at home. And that's a fundamental shift, because more than anything, it's a cultural shift. If I go back to the automotive example, most automotive companies were full of petrol heads. People who love building a combustion engine vehicle and making it fine-tuned and safe and fun to drive. That still needs to be there. But in the world we're living in now, it's just as much about the broader experience, the partnerships, the ecosystems, the devices, and everything else, and the net new experiences you can deliver. And a huge element will be how do those companies adapt to that change?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And the parallel I draw based on my own experiences is how the telecoms industry changed. I mean, we just about remember having a fixed line phone into your home, and that was it. That was what the telecom company provided. And now you get your full multimedia experience through a TV, using your internet connection and so on from them. And that's been, over 20 years, a massive shift for them. So I suppose you're talking about something similar happening in energy.
I would agree. And I think what's also happening is the move away from one or two providers to a multitude of providers. And within that, you're getting competition, you're getting innovation, but also you're diversifying. So telecoms companies in yesteryear only had one or two product offerings.
That's right.
To compete now with the proliferation of smaller providers, they're having to broaden their offering to provide much more and lean into experiences, lean into loyalty, lean into whole new areas they weren't typically used to. So a great parallel.
So it's exciting times and there's a lot happening.
Alex, you mentioned how important it is for businesses to understand their customers and really build around their customer. But a lot of the businesses have quite siloed systems and they need to be connected. So we've seen from research that there can be a 25% increase in earnings from connecting this technology. Can you tell us about how software can be used to solve that issue?
Yeah, I'd say it's software and more. I think it's a mentality shift as well. I think lots of companies have operated in data silos where function X is responsible for Y data set and another function responsible for this. And in reality, all of it is consumer data and consumer information. It's gold dust. So I think first and foremost, start with strategy. There needs to be an approach to collecting the information and a willingness to do that at an enterprise level. Then from a software perspective, it's come on leaps and bounds. I mean, I think the expression of a customer data platform wouldn't have existed 5-10 years ago. And this is the notion of unifying all customer data, harmonizing that customer data, and then using and acting upon it to drive new innovation. So now we've got really advanced technologies that can stitch together the data from a proliferation of systems, make sense of it, deliver it in one set format, and then allow other tools and processes to use that and drive innovation. And I'd say any consumer-facing organization, if they haven't got that sort of muscle memory, whether that's from a people and process perspective or from a systems perspective, they're behind the curve, massively behind the curve.
It's a fascinating point, and you can really see how there's a need for the sort of work that you do in helping these enterprises change that mind shift so that they can pull together, the way they work, the things that they do and the technology they use to rethink their businesses. Certainly in the world that we work in, it takes a moment for the penny to drop about exactly what's coming. And I think you've alluded to how data is changing the energy sector.
Yeah.
So if I'm talking to my dad about home energy management and that whole space, he'll sort of say, well, I don't really understand what you're talking about. And we get into, well, imagine a world where you've got solar panels on your roof, and you're driving an electric vehicle, but you've also got a great tariff that you've signed up to from one of the more enlightened energy providers as well. And he's like, okay, well, that's fine, but how's that going to help me? And in truth, what we're trying to do in this space is help customers like him save money. But that isn't just about having those three products, the tariff, the solar and vehicle. It's also about how do they work together in a well-orchestrated way. Because the sun might be forecast to shine tomorrow, but you've got your car plugged in to charge up overnight tonight. So you actually need the data working with AI to say, actually, the best thing to do is to delay the charge. I know that this person doesn't generally drive whatever the day of the week it is tomorrow, so let's charge for free off the sunshine then instead. It becomes a whole comprehensive coming together of the data, the AI, and the customer's individual needs.
I would go further for consumers to let companies into their home and to provide guidance and advice, a lot of it is based on trust. It's quite an abstract term because you're trusting a system, but people trust systems. We trust our phones. We trust lots of the platforms out there that we use on a day-to-day basis. And if the advice you're getting back makes sense, it's personal to you, then you trust it and you're going to keep trusting it. Let's just take that example with your father. If your father every day drives from 6 in the morning to 7 in the morning and comes back from somewhere at, say, 6, 7 p.m., commutes maybe, and the advice is charge at that time, because that's what the macro data is saying. The best time for you to charge your vehicle is this time of day, not understanding that he drives at that time, so needs his car at that time.
That's right.
The trust won't be there. You've not understood me as an individual. You've not understood how I use energy, how I use my car. So immediately I am going to distrust you. There was a great research paper done years ago that said it took 12 good experiences to undo one bad experience.
Wow.
So if you don't understand your consumer and you get one of those steps so fundamentally wrong, you have to work 12 times as hard to win them back to where they were before. And so, yes, it's about data. Yes, it's about AI, but it's a means to an end to deliver more trusting, excellent customer experiences. And in the home, we talk a lot about the car, the battery. I would say it's much simpler. Help me to use my energy more effectively, cheaper with a lower carbon emission. Most people, it's in that order. Some people, it's the other way around. But fundamentally, consumers, we all have a flat home. We all have devices we use. People want to know how to use them more effectively. And what you guys are doing is absolutely in that pathway. But a lot of it comes back to that critical word of trust.
And I didn't know that stat, but I don't think I'll forget it now. You have to work 12 times as hard to correct a mistake that you've made to get it right first time.
That is really interesting. And it just shows how important the customer experience is to essentially bringing in new products into this landscape. So can you elaborate on how data can be used to improve the customer experience?
To use an industry example, I would say data is the fuel of customer experience. We are all leaving a trail of data everywhere we go, from driving our car to turning the heating on to using the toaster in the morning. Everything we do leaves a trail of data. And I think it's the responsibility of companies to collect that data in a trusted way, in the right way, but use it effectively to drive better customer experiences. Without that data, what are you using? You're using data points, other data points that aren't specific to that individual. You're falling into the trap of the example earlier with Richard's father, where you're saying, oh, the macro data says charge at this time, rather than your data saying charge at this time. And for energy suppliers, energy lifestyle companies, as they should start to think about themselves, they're suddenly have a wealth of data they've never had before. Before it was, I give you X tariff and I can see how much I'm shipping to your household or providing to your household, and then it stopped there. Now, there's the ability to understand how you're using your vehicle, when you're using your vehicle, what are you using it for, the devices. Smart meters have opened up a wealth of data around timing, which room, which device, etc., which person within the household. You can extrapolate insights from that data around seasonality, around days of the week, around all those amazing elements. If they can grasp that, then going back to the point earlier, if the consumer just wants to find out how to optimize the use in their household from a cost and emissions perspective, you can suddenly do that. And that's why data is so fundamental. I would almost have the mindset of collect the right data, as much of it as possible, and invest in making sense of it. Because once you make sense of it, then with that notion of it being the fuel, it can power new experiences. It can power new businesses. It can power new service lines. And going back to the analogy of telcos earlier, I would expect to see energy lifestyle companies start offering more lines of service over the next 3, 5, 10 years. And you can't do that without data. Mm-hmm. And that's a big trend we'll see. I would go as far as saying the ones that will thrive will be the ones that master and embrace data the most.
So it's really personalizing the use of that data to be the most effective, which is fantastic. So I think that kind of leads me on to the next part. Obviously, we've talked about how there's going to be a wealth of data that all these businesses have, but actually it needs to be ingested and put out in an intelligent way. So how can AI be used?
How could AI be used? In so many ways. Firstly, we just take getting the data in. AI can be incredibly useful in speeding that up, in checking it, spotting whether there's an error. spotting whether, hang on, suddenly this doesn't look right. Richard's dad, for the last 3 years, the data's looked like this and suddenly it's looking like this. Hey, has something changed? Is our data wrong? Is something changed with Richard's dad? Those elements are really fundamental. I would say that is table stakes, though. There was a fascinating interview that's going viral on LinkedIn with Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, that talks about there's going to be no more software, which is a pretty scary thought for us that work in software. But actually, when you scratch deeper, what he's saying is, if you collect the data and you make sense of it, you skip the application layer, which is traditionally software, and you go straight to AI. And that's where we're heading. With digital workers, with autonomous agents, we'll start to have AI doing far more. So then you get, once the data's there, what do you do with it? And you could have, as Powerverse offer, home energy agents in the house telling you what you can do. You don't need to get your mobile phone out and interact with that software. Your agent, your support person in the household, can coach you through that whole journey without the need to engage with a platform or a tool or a service. And that's the next wave coming. And that will fundamentally reinvent every business. Most businesses, or most industries, their business model has been defined by human labor. Now that underpinning element is changing. There'll be human labor plus digital labor. So the economics, the business models, the services, all of that's going to get reshaped in the next 5 to 10 years. And every industry is going to come out with a new business model, a new way of working. And if we can free up the right time, suddenly we can get people thinking more about what great services could we introduce, what great experiences could we deliver, rather than spending so much time stuck in spreadsheets and data trying to understand, see the wood from the trees of insights. That should just be done. And you're into the more exciting, more high-value activities.
It's fascinating, and it's so good to hear you talk about some really positive AI use cases there, because obviously AI comes in for a lot of criticism as well. But when you start to think about what we as consumers, as people in our homes, can get out of this in terms of helping us reach our economic and climate goals and the extra free time we get, and then the way that companies can redistribute their assets to give better experiences to the customers as well. It's good to hear that the heart of AI is still in the right place.
Yeah. Nest, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, introduced intelligent meters that adapt to the temperature to optimize heat and emissions based on activity. That was 10 years ago. What does the next wave look like? I'd argue we're a couple of waves beyond, but that was very early AI around optimizing the household. And that was so wildly successful because it was so simple. We understand you turning up, turning down. We're going to set a schedule for you based on your behaviors that reduces your heat and energy consumption, but keeps you warm, keeps you as you want to be. If we can take that mantra and apply it to the rest of the household, to the car, to the air pump, to all your devices, there's real value to be had.
Absolutely.
So Alex, you mentioned about data and AI being really important for the future of businesses. And we know that there are a lot of businesses who want to use it, but don't necessarily know how to do that so effectively. So could you give some advice on essentially the best strategy or the best way of implementing this?
One would be a mantra. And one of the ones I live by on my own personal way of life, but also in business, is think big, start small, scale fast. You have to be really clear on the direction of travel that AI is going to take you on. Think big. But start small. Don't boil the ocean. There are a multitude, and we talked about Nest just a second ago. AI has been around for a long time. The hype train is very hyped right now, but it's been around for a long time. And there are use cases out there that are low-hanging fruit that are easy to do. Build up the confidence around it, and then scale fast. Have a really clear roadmap for how you deliver it. At Salesforce, we've had AI in our platform for years. Einstein has been our AI character that we've had in our products for years. But more recently, we've launched Agentforce, which is our digital workforce platform. So that's bringing digital workers to your organization. And we face those questions, or that reticence that you talked about, quite a lot. How does that apply? But the thing that people, they're leaping to, digital worker means X is going to replace Y. It's not actually the case. It's about augmenting and enhancing. And I'll give an example there. We've got a sports club we work with who historically has had a marketing team of 5. And as a result, they've only been able to market to a certain number of geographies and a certain number of languages. As soon as you can get some digital workers in that marketing function to translate and turn a lot of that content, a lot of those campaigns into multi-language, tailored to individuals, you can suddenly deliver marketing campaigns around the clock to every geography and every language. And suddenly your addressable market quadruples without increasing your FT capacity. That's what we're talking about, removing the human resource constraint of the business model. Going back to my earlier point, we were always defined by how many FTE do we have that allows us to produce X amount of productivity. That equation's broken now. You now can achieve far more productivity or far more output from the same FTE. So I would really encourage companies to embrace it, because if they don't, to be candid, others will, and you'll be left behind. Business models are changing right now. So think big, start small, scale fast.
It's a great mantra.
Great mantra. We might have to use that one.
Think big, start small, scale fast. There you go. One of the reasons we like working with Salesforce is because we do have some very common values and ways of thinking about things. And everything you just said about AI is spot on. Obviously, as you know, we've been investing in Rhea, who is our own AI, who's very much focused around energy management and getting the best experience for the consumer around the energy they use in their home. And what excites me about the partnership is how working with Salesforce and your customer lens that you bring to this, how that then creates those moments for the customer where they get that better experience presented to them using all of the insight that Rhea brings, but then Salesforce combined. Maybe you want to talk a bit more about the partnership now.
Let's start with the vision that we're trying to go towards. We've talked a little bit about energy suppliers becoming energy lifestyle organizations. We talked about AI, we talked about trust, we talked about data. It's within our ability as art organizations to help companies and consumers realize the vision when they wake up in the morning, they have a home energy assistant that knows them, that knows the family, that knows the usage. And when they've got challenges around, when do I charge my car? Am I saving money? Is there ways for me to do A, B, C, and D? There's Rhea out there that can take all that data, has ingested it, has made sense of it, and is providing recommendations back to that consumer that are highly personalized, that allow them to achieve their goals. What are their goals? Typically 2, cost, emissions. It's actually not that complicated when you really simplify it down. But to get there, and what I'm really excited about our partnership is we're doing a number of things. A, we're helping the end consumer achieve those goals, but we're also working to help organizations, those energy suppliers, go through what's going to be a challenging period, shifting from being a supplier to a lifestyle and experience company, and understand what data means to them, what AI means to them, what experience means to them, and come out the other side a new company, one fit for the digital age, one fit for the AI age, that's put the consumer at the heart, but has found a new business model, as we discussed, has found new ways of working, and probably has embraced a new culture as well. And that, at the crux of it, is what we're trying to do. We're trying to help companies and consumers find a new way of working.
And that's what we're excited about. And
super excited.
This is a great partnership.
I'd also say there's a third one that we talk about, which is convenience on top of that. So not only making it more convenient for the customer to use their energy, to save that money and to reduce their emissions, but also making it more convenient for the business to understand their customer and grow that lifetime value of that customer.
I think it's all stitched in. I mean, when you look at customer experience, and historically we've had NPS and CSAT and all these different metrics and understanding of experience, the lever that is the strongest lever in experience is ease and efficiency. Make it easier for me to do A and B. We as humans have effectively evolved over time. You think about the evolution of humans. We went out to find less calorific ways of doing A, B, and C tasks to evolve, from using tools to agriculture, to all the industrial revolutions have all been about finding an easier way of doing something. That's what we're almost wired to think like. So if you can give a consumer an easier way to consume energy and save money, if you can give a company an easier way of finding data, they will grasp it immediately. A better way is subjective. It could be a slightly shinier way. It could be a slightly glossier, luxurious way. If it's not easier, it won't work.
So it's great to talk about how energy companies are being changed by everything that's going on right now. And what strikes me is that it sort of doesn't end there, because as you nicely put it, the energy experience companies that are going to be coming to the fore in the years ahead are not working in isolation. They're part of an ecosystem, so if there is solar and batteries going into people's homes, then there's probably going to be finance around that. When you get an electric vehicle and it's got all of the data which a traditional ICE vehicle does not, that starts to collapse some of those journeys to getting service, for example, and having your car end up in the service centre. There's all sorts of things going on there. I'm interested, because you have a lot of experience in the change sector, what you see as happening in the broader picture.
Well, so much. I mean, firstly, how much time do we spend at home? And you think about the number of industries that peel off the home, and they're all going through change, or will need to go through change. If I just take some of the immediate ones that spring to mind, home builders, huge push from the government to build new homes, but they're going to need to be done in a very different way. And typically the home building experience stops at purchase, and then Barratt will walk away, or whatever it may be. As you move towards lifestyle intelligent home, that changes. Is there an opportunity for them to lean more into the usage experience, and how do they help that buyer get more from the home over time? You're going to see rental companies, estate agents change the way that they sell. Going further, think about mortgages. Historically, mortgages has been a fairly data poor experience. You might have a lot of data to check your credit rating. But actually, if you had home energy data and your house was fit for the future, if it was kitted out with A, B, C, and D, why wouldn't your mortgage rate be lower? Or why wouldn't it lower over time as you deliver on home energy savings, efficiency, emissions, et cetera, et cetera? You mentioned the automotive space. If we know where a car is, why does it have to be serviced in a garage? Why can't it be serviced in your 2-hour window whilst you're parked up at a meeting? Starting to change where you do business, how you do business in those ways are really going to evolve. Now, that's a little bit outside the home, but so much is going to change. And what I'm witnessing a lot is ecosystems being built and organizations realizing to deliver what their consumers expect, they've got to partner. They've got to stop working in a silo as I'm company X and I deliver experience Y. I'm company X, and to deliver experience Y, I'm going to have to work with A, B, C, and D, and work a lot more closely with them. So we're starting to see a lot more collaboration, a lot more consortium, ecosystems, lots of those models. A lot of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis is actually connecting organizations to say, how can you club together to deliver that utopia?
Absolutely fascinating. And thank you for giving us a glimpse of what you're seeing coming down the road for all of us.
We've got one final question for you, which is quite a big one. So in your opinion, what major effect do you think AI will have in 2025 this year? If you could pinpoint it
2025
down to one.
will be the year of the digital worker. It was a term that just started entering the lexicon last year in the same way that LLMs and Gen AI and OpenAI and all those terms was the year before. So this year, and I think even Sam Altman came out yesterday and said the exact same thing. So I'm completely paraphrasing and using his prediction. But I think you'll start to see organizations grapple with what does digital workers mean for our company? What can they do? How do we work with them? And start to reinvent themselves. And I think that will accelerate rapidly month by month. I think the start of the year will be quite light touch. But if we fast forward to December next year, I think that will be the buzzword in enterprise business.
Amazing. Thank you very much. That actually brings us to the end of our podcast. So we just wanted to say thank you very much for coming on. It's been great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Alex.
Cheers.
It's been super.
We've really enjoyed discussing the future electric home and how data and AI is so important in driving these changes forward.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn by searching Powerverse, or share it with someone who might find it helpful. To find out more about our software, visit our website www.powerverse.com.